What's Church? So today I want to come to you with part 5 in the series Foundations of the Covenant. Today we're going to be focusing on the word grace. Grace? What? How can the word grace be a foundation of this Old Testament covenant that you keep talking about? Well, because that's where the word shows up in the writings themselves. What we do, which is we just kind of follow the accepted norm when it comes to understanding in the Bible. The first time that a word is used, that establishes how that word is defined. And when we find the word grace, we're going to find that actually in chapter 6 of the book of Genesis. And then we'll see how it applies there, and then we're going to take that forward and apply it into the New Testament mindset, as it were. We'll be working out of the Blue Letter Bible, as always, because it just has so many free references on there, and it works on literally any device that I've put it on so far. Grab your coffee, grab your computer, meet me back here in a second. Genesis chapter 6, verse 8. Gives us our first incident of the Hebrew word in Strong's H2580. That is where we're going to see how this plays out. How does this word apply in this situation? So what we're looking at when we're reading our Bible is we're reading the best English equivalent of the idea put forward by the Hebrew word or the Greek word or whatever word that you're reading in any language. You're generally not doing a letter for letter translation. You're translating ideas the best that you can, which is why we're going to see a slight variation between the Hebrew idea of grace and the Greek idea of grace. The Hebrew actually has a little bit deeper meaning because of the way that the Hebrew language is put together. So the first incident is, not surprisingly, is Noah and the incident with God getting ready to destroy the earth through the flood. Moses is describing the situation where God had repented himself of making man on the earth and that he was going to start over because the heart of all men had basically turned to pagan idolatry, which involved prostitution, blood drinking, child sacrifices, adult sacrifices, things that the Bible in no way, shape, or form has ever supported or been up for. In the midst of all this, we have Noah finding grace in God's eyes. What does that mean? Well, in our interpretation, in the current world interpretation of what that means, is it was God's unmerited favor towards Noah. That is true, but it does mean far more than that. The Old Testament picture of what grace actually means is the picture of the king coming down to the lowliest in the kingdom, bowing to that lowliest in the kingdom, bringing gifts, things to bless them with, money, food, whatever, clothing, whatever. Some kind of blessing to them. And the only reason why the king or whoever did that was because they wanted to do something good for that person. That person had done nothing to justify what was done for them, and nor could they repay what had been done for them. That's the idea of grace. It's far more than just unmerited favor. It is someone of a high degree coming down to those of a low degree, and not only coming to their level, but being a servant, just like the New Testament teaches that Jesus was. He came not as a conquering king, but as a servant of all, because that is what makes you a great leader, is you're a servant. That's the example we get from the word grace. God coming down to man, making himself not only on the same level as man, but being a servant in the world of man. That is the picture of grace. In John chapter 1, verse 14, we have the first incident of the word grace in the New Testament. This is the same word in Greek that's used in the Greek Old Testament, the Septuagint. We're working with the word that in Greek best represents the idea in Hebrew that gives us this picture of the person of elevation coming down to someone in the kingdom, at the bottom of the kingdom, making themselves a servant to them and blessing them, giving them gifts or abilities or knowledge or whatever. We also have the word grace that comes up again a little further in the book of John, where we have the law of Moses, the law coming through Moses, but grace and truth coming through Jesus Christ. That's not disparaging to Moses. That is telling you this, he is the foundation. The foundation was Moses. And then to give the better promises, which were prophesied in the Old Testament, to put God's law on our heart, which is all that Jeremiah says. It doesn't say there's a new law. It says he's going to put God's law on our heart. That is what is fulfilled in Jesus and what he did, because he was able to do that, because you cannot show grace to someone who is on your level. You can be gracious, but you cannot show them grace. You're not above them. You have to be above them. And so with you not being above them, Moses wasn't above the rest of the people of the nation of Israel. The Old Testament teaches that even when they established the king, that the king was not to look at himself as being above the rest of the nation, because they were all on the same plane, and to not, get heady and high-minded, because that never turns out very well, let me just tell you. That is the grace that we have. And that's what that verse means. God gave the instruction, the Torah, the law, the good law, not the one made up, the one that's actually in the Old Testament. He gave that to Moses on Mount Sinai. Then now Jesus has come as a way to fulfill parts of it, fulfill a priesthood, new order. That's taken care of. That's not the rest of it. Most of it is about other things other than that. We sometimes think that grace means that because he has showed us this favor, that we don't have to do what he's asking us to do. But Jesus made it clear. He says, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. And then also in the book of John, in 5 or 6 different locations, Jesus says that the instructions, the words that I have are not mine, but they come from the Father. And there's only one place where we have record of what the Father's instructions are, and that is coming from Mount Sinai. That seems like a pretty straight line to me. Not everyone agrees with that, but they're really not going to agree with this next incident of where the word grace shows up in the New Testament. For brevity, we're going to jump to Acts chapter 4 and verse 33, and this is the story of Ananias and Sapphira. And they conspired to lie to everyone around them. I'm not exactly sure why. Apparently the motivation was pretty dark. Ananias comes in, says this is what we did, and Peter says, you're out, and he died. That is under grace. Jesus had already been crucified. He had already been buried, already been resurrected, already ascended. All of that has already happened. According to some of you guys, we're in this grace dispensation. Where was the grace for Ananias and Sapphira? You're misusing the definition of the word grace. That's not what grace means. Grace means that a favor was done to you by someone who didn't have to do it. It doesn't say that you now all of a sudden don't have to do what you're supposed to do in the kingdom. Paul makes it very, very clear, if we are going to be part of Christ, accept Jesus as our Messiah, as our Savior, that we are grafted into Israel, because the standard is the same for every generation, for the native born, for the sojourner living among you, the foreigner in your gates. Take your pick. If you are going to follow God, we are to follow him based on the instruction given to us, not only at Mount Sinai, but further refined and further explained through the New Testament and Jesus and those who followed after, because they're all building on the same foundation. The covenant continues to grow. The promises change. The promises get better, but the instructions do not. The things that we have the ability to do, the Bible tells us we should do them. When it says for him to know to do right and to not do it, to him is sin, it tells me we know to do right. Doing right means that we're doing what the Father expects of us. He gives us those directions, and they're pretty straightforward. They're not too hard to follow, and he says so many times, Paul says so. And if you don't understand these words like grace, you can kind of convince yourself that now suddenly we don't have any kind of standard that we have to live by other than love your neighbors, yourself, and love God, but we don't have action that backs that up. The Bible really does say over and over that faith without works is dead. There needs to be evidence to the gift that you have received. You're showing your thanks to the Father for what he gave you in doing the things that he asked you to do. That is the grace that needs to sweep the country, is the grace that understands that with rights come responsibility. So, All right, that's it for this episode, and I will see you guys very soon. Thanks for stopping in. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. It really does help get the message out, and then helps us build a community, and that's really what this is all about. So, all right, love you guys. See you soon. Bye.